very soon after the announcement by Representative Spencer Backus that he would not be seeking re-election, that we would cover the 6th Congressional District race like the morning dew, if you will. We'll try to cover it as comprehensively as anyone, and I feel like we're honoring and have honored that commitment. Well, less than 6 weeks to go now before voters will go to the polls for the primary election process. There is an individual, Avery Vice, running as a Democrat, so there will be a general election, but anyone who understands the 6th Congressional District understands how important this primary is in selecting the next congressman of that district. Speaking of, we have one of those individuals vying for your vote in studio this morning. Will Brooke joins us once again on the Murphy Show. Will, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
How's everything going?
To be here.
You enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I actually am having a pretty good time.
I mean, for someone who has dipped his toe in the political waters for the first time after years of being a businessman, and we well know your career path and your success in our communities, I'm just curious what surprises you've had, what are some of the pitfalls? I mean, you're not by any stretch of the imagination, you're not a politician. You're just a businessman that thinks he can do good and serve the people. Give us your thoughts about the race so far.
Well, the process is very interesting because I'm having to learn how to allow myself to be managed, and that's something I'm not accustomed to doing. All of my career, I've sort of managed my own schedule and handled my own stuff, but there's so many things going on in the course of a campaign. You have to rely on the people around you to manage your schedule, tell you where to go and what's important. And so I've had to get used to that. But the real joy in it has been all the people that I've had an opportunity to meet. I've spent a lot of time working out in particularly the rural counties around Jefferson and Shelby County, and now I'm spending more and more time working here. And I'm making new relationships all across the way, and I've really, really enjoyed doing that.
Is it a difficult task? And I thought this when I watched a few days ago the forum over at Hoover High School. And it's been well stated that, and I think any number of the candidates, you yourself may have said this at one point or another, that, on 85, 90, maybe even 95% of the issues you deal with, the positions are going to be largely the same amongst the candidates on the stage, with the possible exception of Rob Shattuck. We don't really know where Rob is on a lot of these issues. That said, so what is the goal? Is the goal to highlight priorities? Is the goal to highlight how you can better effectively dig into these issues that you agree on with these other candidates?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting here, there is a lot of agreement because, we talked about this some before when I was here. We are all Republicans, and Republican stands for something. That label means something, and it means that essentially we're all conservative in thought. We're conservative in ideology, so you'll find a lot of alignment there. There is a tremendous difference in our backgrounds, and that's something that I've tried to highlight, that as I've worked my way through my business and civic and charitable efforts along the way, I've had the privilege of having experiences that have taught me how to deal with a lot of different people in a lot of different settings on a lot of different issues and find ways to make agreement or reach agreement on those things. We don't know what the issues are that are going to fall in front of us if and when one of us is elected to Congress. So it's almost impossible to prognosticate what the future is going to hold. So I think it's really important to focus on how sort of capable the people are in terms of experience and outlook and tool set to understand how effectively they're going to be able to deal with the issues that do wind up in front of them.
I'll ask Buddy Love to cue up your ad because I want to play a little portion of it. And slip on those headphones if you don't mind, Will, because I want you to make sure that you can hear. You made a splash, an initial multimedia splash. This was not a television ad per se. It was an internet ad that you did, and I enjoyed it. I've been interested in the response to it. Just to give folks a flavor for this, this was the initial. What was it called, Will? Do you remember the title of it? It was. I know the first thing you say is we're out here today to have a little fun.
Bingo.
And let's do some damage, I think is what it was called. This is just a little portion of that let's do some damage ad.
This is Will Brooke. We're down here to have a little fun today and talk about two serious subjects, the Second Amendment and see how much damage we can do to this copy of Obamacare.
So that's kind of the initial portion of the ad, and it's more of a visual look. You can find it online. It's you have a little fun. You take some shots at Obamacare, and this has gotten you a lot of attention, not just in the 6th District, but nationally. What's the response been to this ad?
It's been uniformly positive because, and let me tell you why. It speaks of two important topics. One of them is the Second Amendment, which is very important to us as Americans, both in terms of our identity as a nation and our ability to keep freedom as a nation. And most people don't understand that. They don't focus on that. They look at other issues. And as Thomas Jefferson said, the Second Amendment will only be important. The beauty of the Second Amendment is it will only be important if someone tries to take it away. And it needs to just be left at that. That's what it's about. Obamacare, the reason I took a shot at Obamacare is because it's a terrible piece of legislation. It's inconsistent with American ideals. We would take, if it were fully implemented, 20% of the U.S. economy and scrape it under the federal government when we can't even afford to pay for Medicare. It's already wrecking the federal budget. We need to focus on how to make sure Medicare operates in a solvent manner within the resources that are available to it, and we are capable of doing that, not quintuple down by dragging in all of health care under it, because all that will do will be to pull our health care system down to the lowest common denominator. It's a bad mistake. It's a socialist solution. It's not a smart idea, and we need to get rid of it.
I've had two questions asked of me about that ad. One, were those your guns?
Yes, sir.
Two, was that your wood chipper?
No.
Fair enough. I don't know why a man would need to own. I know why you need to own an AR-15. I don't know why you need to own a wood chipper.
Several people have told me they want it to be my wood chipper.
But in a more serious fashion, the reaction has been. It's interesting, the reaction that I've gotten, because most of it has been positive. They get that it was
tongue-in-cheek.
It was a tongue-in-cheek way to address some serious issues. It's been interesting to me that females have more than males taken a different look at. I mean, they look at it as, well, I heard the word embarrassing, that it embarrassed Alabama because it was. I don't know why, because I didn't see it that way at all. Have you heard that at all? Have you seen that at all?
You know, it's really funny. We have Mr. Deputy Director Mark over here is laughing because he and I have an ongoing debate as to whether women are offended by this ad or not. And so I've made a point of asking women, what did you think? And in my very informal internal poll on this, it's about 80% giving it the thumbs up and 20% giving it a thumbs down. And, you know, I respect the thumbs down.
You either find the humor in it or you don't.
You don't.
I mean,
that's right.
I think majority do. You know, no humor in some of these charges being leveled against you. I mean, one candidate in your race, Dr. Chad Mathis, has chosen to go negative on everybody. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that?
You know, he's just trying to find a way to distinguish himself among a busy field of candidates. And I don't think it's a real affirmative or good way to do it, and I think the people of Alabama have made it real clear they're sick of negative campaigns.
I want to give you the opportunity, and you did this the last time you were on, but I think it bears repeating because he's just rolling. These charges are out there that you've given to Democrats in the past in terms of political contribution. I want to give you a chance to speak to that charge.
Well, the one that keeps getting pointed out is the contribution that was made to Ben Nelson, Nebraska senator. There's an effort to tie that to Obamacare. When that contribution was made, Mr. Obama, much less Obamacare, were not even on the radar screen. Nobody even knew who they were. I'm sure some people did, but certainly the American people didn't. We were fighting at that point a nationwide battle to get the estate tax repealed. And there's a lawyer from Birmingham who led that. The American Family Business Institute was pushing that nationwide. The Senate was, I think, 49 Republican, 48 Democrat, and we were right on the cusp of getting and the House was thoroughly in favor of a repeal, and we were this close to getting the Senate over the line. And we were talking to Ben Nelson and Democratic senators everywhere who would listen to us. Nelson's one of the most conservative Democratic senators on record. There were 6 Republicans in the Senate at the time that had more liberal voting records than he did, and he proved to be a strong supporter. He voted in favor of repeal, and so it was part of a concerted effort to get rid of a tax that Americans uniformly can't stand.
The other day, Hoover High School, you made a comment, and I want to play that comment real quickly because I think it's important that we just hear you. I'll play you to you, Will. I think you know what you said, but for the folks that may have missed it, this was at the Hoover High School Forum a few days ago.
The immigration laws are really creating a serious problem for the United States right now, but it's not so much the laws themselves as it is the failure of a succession of presidents, and in particular this president, to enforce the laws that are already on the books. It's left us with open borders, an unregulated flow of immigrants coming into the United States, which is not good for our country in many ways, and it's certainly not good for those immigrants because they wind up being here illegally. Congress needs to deal with this. It's one of the responsibilities that are given to Congress specifically under the terms of the Constitution that I showed you earlier. And both the President on the one hand is ignoring the law and not enforcing the law that's on the books, and Congress is failing to deal with a very serious national problem. So we need to deal with that. But the first step is we need to take control of our borders in such a way that we can regulate who's coming and going. Number two, we do need to have a path to legal status for those that are in the country illegally. So that we can begin to deal with them. They are here, so we have to deal with them. If they don't abide by the law or refuse to get on that path, then they should leave the country. And then finally, we should have comprehensive immigration reform, which gives us control over how immigrants come into our country.
All right, there's Will Brooke from a few days ago at Hoover High School. Let's do a path to legal status. That perks some ears up because I think when you say that, people think you're talking about citizenship, but you were not.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a politician and don't claim to be, and I'm beginning to learn the importance of words and how people focus on single words. It's real weird to me because when I say a path to legal status, what people hear is a path to citizenship, and of course that's not what I said. I follow that up by saying I am absolutely opposed to amnesty. I think it's that would be a terrible thing to do. It goes against the rule of law. It negates existing law on the books. But on the other hand, we've got 11 million people here, and we've got to figure out what to do with them. Now, they can become legal when they leave the United States, and they're no longer illegal immigrants, or they can become legal by getting on a responsible track that's consistent with what we try and do to bring people into our culture in the United States. But you've got to divide it one way or the other.
And when you say comprehensive immigration reform, immediately people like me think, oh, the Senate bill that Rubio had and then moved away from. You were not discussing that bill?
To the importance of words. Yeah, I understand now that that's what that means, and that's not what I meant. We just have – the number one thing we have to do is secure the borders, period. And I spoke to Senator Sessions about this early on before I publicly declared. I also have spoken to his office since the Hoover forum. And the analogy that he used or that was used in an interview of him years ago holds true today. If you've got a broken pipe in your attic and water's pouring into your house, it makes no sense to head to the kitchen with a mop to try and clean things up. You need to go to the attic and fix the broken pipe. We have a broken pipe in the United States that's allowing immigrants to come in here and compete with Americans for jobs, be under the radar screen where we don't know who they are, where they are, or what they're doing. We have to deal with those borders. There can be no solution to this until the border problem is solved, and a big part of that is the refusal of this president to enforce the law, and Congress should deal with that.
The other side of this, there was a follow-up question that was asked of you, and I was far more intrigued with the follow-up question, and that is one of the individuals that you're vying, that you guys are competing against one another for the 6th Congressional District. Scott Beeson sponsored HB 56, and you were asked if you were supportive of that at the time. Were you supportive of that at the time?
Well, actually, what I was asked was if I had problems with that bill and what I thought about that bill as it was tabled in the Alabama legislature. And I declined to discuss that for the simple reason that that bill's not in front of us. What we ought to be talking about is what we would do as congresspeople if we were elected and went to Congress and were faced with a decision about what we were going to do there. And that's why my answer went the way that it did.
Well, the reason it intrigued me is that you obviously are affiliated with the Business Council of Alabama, and the Business Council of Alabama was against HB 56, correct?
Yeah, Business Council of Alabama wanted to see HB 56 modified because we felt like the way it was written, it was not good for business in Alabama.
Are you in favor of E-Verify?
Yes, absolutely in favor of E-Verify. It should be used very broadly because it's a good and effective system and a shortcut to dealing with the question of someone's legal status.
Well, let's deal with this. One of your competitors, in response to what you said about illegal immigration and how to deal with it, has now gone on record as saying his solution is to, quote, deport them, end quote. Is that a realistic solution to this problem?
No, it's not a realistic solution, and it's not you know, if you go talk to a peach farmer in Chilton County and they face the prospect of suddenly having no immigrant workers to help harvest their crops, or a tomato farmer in Blount County, they'll be talking to you about rotting produce on the ground. And we just got to be smarter than that.
You talk about what's your line? Majoring in the majors?
Yeah, you bet.
And you were asked a question about gay marriage in Alabama, and you kind of deflected to that idea of, look, we need to focus on the things and prioritize on the things. And I want to readdress that because there does seem to be nationwide a shift on the debate and the thoughts about the issue of gay marriage. I'm well on record. I call myself a libertarian with a small L, right? I don't belong to the party. I bathe too much. But I do belong to the philosophy that government should touch lightest in a lot of these areas. Readdress that issue of gay marriage and your position on it, and your feeling that you need to prioritize some other issues above some of those social issues.
Yeah, so I think we have a bad habit in politics in America right now, which is maybe getting worse. I hope the wave is about to crest, where we pick issues that divide us as a nation, and they prevent us from being able to make the kind of progress we need for the benefit of all Americans. And I think it's a bad mistake. It's polarizing politics that prevents. It's like we pick the worst, most difficult, most divisive issues we can find, and we focus on those, and then we fall out in the street fighting. And it's just not productive. We have large, what I call existential issues that face our country, which relate to the national debt, how we treat freedom in America, how we expect our government to operate. Those things are going to determine what America looks like in a very profound way over the next 50 to 100 years. We need to focus there. We need to look for ways to solve big problems instead of running away from them. And the federal deficits and the national debt are a major problem that we have to deal with. And so it's not that those issues aren't important to me. They are. As a matter of faith, that informs my view on those. But I just don't think it's where we need to focus as a country right now.
See, for me, it's a matter of equality, and I want gay couples to have to pay as much in taxes as my wife and I have to pay. You know what?
I can't argue with
that. It's a funny thing because some of these folks in Alabama, they're against state law. They're filing jointly. Just to, I guess to get it in the court system or whatnot, and they're finding out that filing jointly, they're paying more in taxes than they would be filing separately. Welcome to my world.
No.
Issue of Common Core. The opportunity was offered to the panel, to the 7 candidates. Does anyone here agree with Common Core standards? And nobody raised their hands. Talk to me about Common Core.
Well, Common Core, again, is one of these issues where the federal government, I think, is guilty of overreach. There are 3 statutes on the books at the federal level that say the federal government may not, cannot, should not, shall not try and influence or participate in state educational matters. Yet the federal government, through the Department of Education, is trying to do exactly that through Common Core, and we just need to say no to that. We're just not going to do it. Common Core, as originally conceived by the Association of Governors and School Officers, school superintendents, was a completely voluntary concept to harmonize a little bit in the standards that states were paying attention to in formulating state education policy. And that, as long as it's voluntary, is fine. But when the federal government tries to hijack the van and drive it into the garage with their policy in it, it becomes a problem because it begins to override state rights and our ability to conduct education in a model that best suits ourselves.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when I hear you saying that you don't take issue with trying to get some form of standards voluntarily entered into with the states, but it was once the race to the top cash was kind of linked to it that you start having problems?
And this is what the federal government does. They borrow money from our grandchildren to bribe us to do what they want us to today. It's very perverse, and we've got to say no to it. It's not good. And education is a great example. We can fight the fight over this one because this is a pattern the federal government's gotten into in transportation, across the board, that we have to say no to.
Finally, So I'm on record as saying that I'm naturally a pessimist. So I'm on record as saying $17 trillion in debt. The best that we can hope for as a nation is to stop adding to it. I don't foresee a future where we can stop paying it back. Maybe you're a little more optimistic on this front, but if you're in Congress, is that a number one and number two? I would think that would be a high priority of yours.
Hammering on the deficit and the debt is a number one priority for me. And I'm an optimist, and I believe we can deal with it.
Will, come back soon. 5 some odd weeks left before the June 3rd primary. What's your website?
www.votewillforcongress.com.
Go to find out more information on Will Brooke. Thanks for staying a little overtime. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That's Will Brooke.